A black car stopped outside a small, broken-down school gate. No security. No cameras. No announcement. Just one man, wearing a plain gray hoodie, stepping out quietly and looking at a building he hadn't seen in 25 years. This man was worth more than $400 million. He owned 3 companies. He had been on the cover of business magazines. He had shaken hands with presidents. But that morning, he wasn't a CEO. He was just a boy again, standing outside the gate of the school that once didn't believe in him. Nobody in that school knew who he really was. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why what he did next matters more than any business deal he ever signed. If you enjoy real, heartfelt stories about life, success, and second chances, make sure you stay until the end, because the final 5 minutes of this story will hit you harder than you expect. Let's begin. To understand why this visit meant so much, we have to go back. 25 years earlier, in a small town, there was a boy named Daniel. Daniel wasn't rich. His father worked as a mechanic, fixing old trucks in a tiny garage that barely made enough money to keep the lights on. His mother stitched clothes for neighbors to earn a little extra. Daniel wore the same 2 shirts to school, washed and re-washed until the color faded. His shoes had a hole near the toe that he covered with tape so no one would notice. He wasn't the smartest kid in class. He wasn't the fastest runner. He didn't have the newest bag or the coolest pencil box. What he had was a quiet kind of hope. A feeling deep inside that one day things would be different. But hope doesn't always protect you from pain. In that school, there was a teacher, we'll call him Mr. Reynolds, who had a habit of comparing students in front of the entire class. He would hold up test papers and read out names, praising some, mocking others. One day, Daniel failed a math test. Not because he didn't try, but because he had spent the previous night helping his father fix a neighbor's car engine just so they could afford dinner. Mr. Reynolds held up his paper in front of 30 students and said the words that would stay with Daniel for the rest of his life. Some people are just not built for success. Save yourself the disappointment, Daniel. Not everyone is meant to make it far. The classroom laughed. Not because they were cruel, but because that's what children do when a teacher gives them permission to laugh. Daniel didn't cry that day. He walked home in silence, holding his broken shoes together with tape, repeating those words in his head. Not everyone is meant to make it far. That sentence became a shadow that followed him for years. Most stories about pain stop at the pain. But real life doesn't stop there. It moves forward, even when we don't feel ready. Daniel graduated from that school with average grades and no real plan. He worked small jobs, cleaning floors at a supermarket, delivering newspapers before sunrise, washing cars on weekends. At 19, he had almost nothing. A worn-out backpack. A notebook full of ideas nobody had asked to see. And that same quiet voice in his head, sometimes whispering doubt, sometimes whispering hope. One evening, while repairing a broken laptop for a neighbor just to earn a few dollars, Daniel noticed something. He was good with technology. Better than good, he understood it in a way that felt natural, almost effortless. So he started small. He began fixing computers for people in his town. Then he taught himself basic coding from library books and free online tutorials, sitting in an internet cafe because he couldn't afford a computer of his own. There were countless nights where he wanted to quit. Nights where rent was due and his pockets were empty. Nights where that old memory came back, not everyone is meant to make it far, and it felt true. But there was one thing Daniel held on to. His mother had once told him, "A door doesn't care how many times it was knocked on before it finally opens. It only cares that someone kept knocking." So he kept knocking. At 23, Daniel built a small software tool that helped local shop owners manage their inventory more easily. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't revolutionary. But it solved a real problem for real people. Word spread. A few shop owners became a dozen. A dozen became 100. Within 2 years, that small tool became a company. That company caught the attention of investors. And slowly, painfully, step by step, Daniel began building something bigger than he ever imagined. By the time he turned 35, Daniel was the founder and CEO of a technology company that employed over 2,000 people across multiple countries. He had done what almost no one believed he could do. But success, as Daniel would later say in interviews, doesn't erase old wounds. It just gives you the resources to finally look at them. Years passed. Daniel's company grew into an empire. He built schools for underprivileged children in different states, something he never spoke about publicly, because for him, it wasn't about recognition. It was about closing a wound that never fully healed. But there was one school he had never returned to. His old school. Every year, his assistant would remind him of local events, conferences, and invitations. And every year, when the topic of his hometown came up, Daniel would quietly change the subject. Until one ordinary Tuesday morning, Daniel was reviewing his schedule when his assistant mentioned that his old town was hosting a small educational fair, schools showcasing student projects to the community. It wasn't a big event. It wasn't for CEOs or public figures. It was simple and local. Daniel stared at the screen for a long moment. Then, without telling his board members, his PR team, or even his closest colleagues, he made a decision. "Clear my schedule for 2 days," he told his assistant. "And don't tell anyone where I'm going." He didn't take his private jet. He didn't bring security. He didn't wear one of his tailored suits. He wore a plain gray hoodie, jeans, and an old cap, the same style of clothing he used to wear as a teenager, except this time, it was a choice, not a necessity. He drove himself, alone, back to the town he grew up in. The roads had changed. New buildings stood where old fields used to be. But as he got closer to his old neighborhood, small pieces of memory returned. The corner store where he used to buy bread, the narrow street where he used to run barefoot in summer, the wall he used to sit on while dreaming about a future no one believed in. And finally, the school. It looked smaller than he remembered. The paint was peeling. The gate creaked the same way it always had. A few students walked past him, not recognizing the man who had once sat in these very classrooms with holes in his shoes. Daniel didn't walk in as Daniel, the successful entrepreneur. He walked in as a visitor named Dan, a man who told the front office he wanted to see the educational fair like everyone else. No one questioned him. No one recognized him. He looked like any regular parent or community member. As he walked through the halls, memories hit him one after another. The classroom where he failed that math test, the hallway where he used to eat lunch alone, the small library where he first discovered books that made him believe in something bigger than his circumstances. Then, he reached the classroom. His old classroom. The desks were different. The walls had new posters. But the window was the same, the one he used to stare out of during class, imagining a life far away from where he stood. And then, something unexpected happened. An elderly man sat at the teacher's desk, reviewing some papers. Older now, gray-haired, wearing glasses. It was Mr. Reynolds. Still teaching. Still in the same school. Still, in some ways, the same man. For a moment, Daniel's chest tightened. Old memories rushed back, the laughter of classmates, the shame he had carried home that day, the words that shaped years of his self-doubt. He could have walked away. He could have avoided this entirely. But instead Daniel walked into the room. "Excuse me," he said calmly. "Mr. Reynolds?" The old teacher looked up, confused. "Yes? Can I help you?" Daniel took a breath. "You probably don't remember me. My name is Daniel. I was a student here, a long time ago." Mr. Reynolds studied his face, searching old memories. "Daniel. Daniel Cole?" Daniel nodded. The teacher's expression shifted, surprise, then something closer to nervousness. I've heard your name before. On the news, I think. Aren't you? Yes, Daniel said quietly. I'm that Daniel. There was a long pause. The kind of silence that carries 25 years inside it. Then Daniel said something that would change everything. I'm not here to blame you, Mr. Reynolds. I'm here because I needed to see this room again. And I needed you to know something. The old teacher sat still, unsure of what was coming. You once told me that not everyone is meant to make it far. Daniel continued, his voice steady but full of emotion. For years I believed that. It broke something inside me. But it also, somehow, became the reason I refused to give up. I wanted to prove that sentence wrong, not for revenge, but for myself. Mr. Reynolds looked down, visibly shaken. Daniel, I don't even remember saying that. But if I did, I'm deeply sorry. I said many things over the years without understanding the weight they carried. I was wrong. Daniel nodded slowly. I'm not here for an apology. I already forgave that moment a long time ago. I'm here to say thank you, not for the words themselves, but for what they pushed me to become. The old teacher's eyes filled with tears. I never imagined that a careless sentence from an ordinary afternoon could shape someone's entire life. That's the thing, Daniel said gently. Teachers, parents, strangers, we rarely know which of our words will become someone's turning point. Some words break people. Others accidentally build them. I chose to let mine build me. For the next hour, the two of them talked, not as CEO and teacher, not as student and authority figure, but simply as two men reflecting on the strange, unpredictable nature of life. Before Daniel left, he made one quiet request to the school's principal. Without revealing his full identity to the students or press, he funded a full scholarship program for underprivileged students at that very school, ensuring that no child would ever be told they weren't built for success. He asked for no plaque, no press release, no announcement with his name on it. He simply wanted the next Daniel, whoever that would be, to have a fairer chance. This story teaches us something powerful, something far beyond business success. First, painful words can either destroy you or fuel you. The choice is always yours. Daniel could have let that classroom moment define his limits. Instead, he let it define his determination. Second, true success isn't about proving people wrong. It's about becoming so at peace with yourself that revenge no longer interests you. Notice that Daniel didn't return to humiliate his old teacher. He returned to release the weight he had been carrying, quietly and with dignity. Third, the people who doubt us are rarely villains. They're often just ordinary humans, tired, flawed, and unaware of the impact of their words. Mr. Reynolds wasn't portrayed as evil, just human, careless in a moment, unaware of the years that single sentence would echo. Fourth, real success gives you the power to help silently. Daniel didn't fund that scholarship for attention. He did it because he understood, more than anyone, what it feels like to need someone to believe in you when no one else does. And perhaps the most important lesson of all, you don't need permission to succeed. Not from a teacher, a classmate, a boss, or even your own doubts. Every person who ever felt not good enough has the same choice Daniel had, to let those words become a wall, or to let them become fuel. Daniel's story isn't really about becoming a CEO. It isn't about the money, the company, or the empire he built. It's about a boy with taped-up shoes who refused to let one sentence define his entire future. It's about the quiet, unseen battles so many of us fight, the doubts whispered by others, and sometimes, the ones we whisper to ourselves. And it's a reminder that somewhere out there, someone might be sitting in a classroom right now, hearing words that feel like the end of their story. But it's never the end. It's often just the beginning. So let's bring it all together. A CEO secretly returned to the school that once doubted him, not for fame, not for revenge, but to make peace with his past and quietly change the future for others. He proved that the words that hurt us the most can sometimes become the reason we rise the highest. If there's one thing to take from this story, let it be this. No one gets to decide how far you're allowed to go, except you. Whatever doubt someone has planted in your mind, whatever sentence still echoes from your past, you have the power to turn it into your own quiet motivation, just like Daniel did. If this story moved you, touched something real inside you, or reminded you of your own journey, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because we share stories just like this one every single week. Stories about ordinary people who quietly become extraordinary. Drop a comment below and tell us, what's one sentence someone once said to you that you turned into fuel? Thank you for watching until the end. Take care of yourself, believe in your own story, and we'll see you in the next video.